I'm not going to have a lot to say. I want to thank everybody for coming today. And I'm going to be short and sweet, and my daughter will be the main speaker for the family. And I'm very glad that you all have come. And I just still pretty scattered on everything. So thank you very much. And I will now introduce Jon Martin, who is the next speaker.
Well, thank you, everyone, for coming. And Dean, to you and the entire Dingler family, I'm honored to speak today, and I give the condolences of the current and past residents of Ocean Shores and myself, who are feeling your loss at this time of sadness. You know, I was thinking of the past couple of weeks that we've been through with COVID, snow, and rain. You know, and I was just thinking, these are the things that Crystal loved. She loved leading our city when crisis occurred. And I realize that most likely, if Crystal was here, she would want us to focus on what we need to do instead of celebrating her. She'd be telling us that it's not really necessary, but although she'd be very appreciative and supportive of us being here, and if we listened to her, she'd probably just say, hey, I'm just doing what everyone else would do. Crystal was never flashy, it was never about herself, and she was always focused on others. Crystal is what Ocean Shores is. Like most of us, she came here from someplace else, moving here with Dean in 2004, looking to enjoy the next phase of her life. Like those who chose to serve Ocean Shores, it's not something that is planned or even on our list of things to do. She started her service with our community, being part of the library board, and then as its president, before being appointed to the city council. One thing about Ocean Shores politics, it can be rough. But if you survive, there's a little bit of grace that others outside our city give us. You know, when you say that you're in politics in Ocean Shores, people look at you, they give you that smile, and it's kind of like, you know, put their head down and nod that, you know, you're something special because you're from Ocean Shores. You know, history has had leaders who happen to be the right person at the right time, and Crystal was that person. She got in on the ground floor right when things were not going right. You might even say when she got on, the elevator went to the basement. The city had changed its form of government. The first mayor resigned. The second mayor decided they didn't want to run again after being appointed. The road lid with all the issues was just being completed. The big recession hit, and Crystal decided to run for mayor. She had to make painful choices in keeping Ocean Shores from going bankrupt. She took the responsibility that an ordinary person would run from. She took on the charge of being a public works director, combining police and fire duties, dramatically cutting spending, and with Chief Steiner and Steve Ensley's help, she worked endless hours in keeping Ocean Shores moving forward. Choices that she made, either the people supported her 100% or they did not. But that didn't bother her. She ran for mayor 3 times and won each of those times. And I think that each time that she ran, probably the people thought there was no way that she was going to win. But she did. What was to be her last term was to focus on finishing the big projects that she had started. The goals of fixing the jetty, the high dune trails, paying down debt, strengthening our fire and police, and getting sidewalks to downtown. But in turn, it was focused on COVID. And this was going to be the most challenging part of her service to Ocean Shores. As with the recession, there was no playbook and what steps that you need to do in case of the emergency. Yet the mayor, you're expected to know and make the right choices, and it's going to be okay whatever decision is made. Groups will blast you for something that you did do or something you didn't do. But she was great at continuing to keep the city moving and understanding people's frustrations, but understanding you just can't sit there and do nothing. I got to know Crystal when I came on the council, and like most elected officials, you run because something irritated you. And you're going to fix it right away. And I know that I was a pain in her side, not seeing eye to eye, not understanding her history with the city, and why she was so concerned about the city failing. I wish I had more time to ask her questions and get her thoughts. You know, my fondest memory of Crystal was when I was going with her to meet with our representatives to pitch our capital projects down in Olympia, and especially her big passion on fixing the jetty. You know, we prepared, we had a PowerPoint presentation, we had data from experts, we had handouts. We were just so excited that we're going to go and wow them. We gave the presentation, and it was absolutely outstanding. And when it was done, we looked at the group that was there that we were presenting to, thinking, we did such a great job, and how could they even possibly say no? And that's when the response we got was, isn't what you're asking for just like throwing sand into the ocean? You know, my blood boiled, but Crystal was so gracious and positive in responding what the need of the jetty was and how that it would impact the citizens of Ocean Shores. She went from a hell no to, yeah, you're going to get some funding, and I always appreciate it, because one of the things that I have to say, in our early visits, we were a great team working together, but I would agree that I was a little bit abrasive, not very understanding when I didn't get my way, and didn't understand how things get done in Olympia. But we had a great combination. With her coaching, she taught me how to bullet point, how to get to the point, how to get it done in 2 minutes, and listen to what people are telling you, and most of all, a no just means rework it, and bring it back up again, and don't give up. You know, I'm going to miss walking to the council meetings with Mayor Dingler at the head of the dais, and Dean in the back room being such a supportive husband. Still, I'm so glad that I was able to work with Mayor Dingler, and what she has left the city of, making the city of Ocean Shores financially strong, putting together such a fine staff, and putting significant projects on the table that will allow Ocean Shores to move forward and help us build a brighter tomorrow. With that, I'd like to introduce Congressman Derek Kilmer, who Crystal had so much respect for and has been so helpful in the past of working with Crystal on many of our key items. Derek?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and appreciate your good words on behalf of Crystal, and appreciate your leadership. And to Dean and to your whole family, let me just say, we share your loss, and I'm personally grateful for the honor of getting to say a few words about Crystal. I hope you know, I hope your family knows that your loss is felt by people all over our region who were touched by Crystal over the years. Many of the folks on my team were saddened to hear the news of Crystal's passing. I gotta say, I was somewhat tempted to just get up here and talk about how bummed out I was about Crystal's passing. Bummed that my last few interactions with her were over a fuzzy Zoom connection. Bummed that, frankly, her spirit and her energy is irreplaceable. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that if she were here and found that I was moping, she'd probably tell me to just get over myself and get back to work. And while I am indeed bummed, the reality is that I just feel very lucky that Crystal Dingler was a part of my life and a part of our community's life. I feel lucky that Crystal and Dean sat down with me very, very early in my tenure representing this area. We met for fish and chips here in town, and they told me about the things that mattered to them and that mattered to this community. I feel lucky that her first year as the mayor of Ocean Shores was the same as the year I was elected to Congress. And I knew quickly that I had a valuable friend and a valuable partner in a joint mission to make life better for folks in this neck of the woods. We had a common mission in that regard. She cared so deeply about this community. She was tireless in its defense and unwavering in her advocacy on its behalf. I feel very lucky that Ocean Shores had such a strong leader, someone who, if she saw a problem, her response was not to complain about it, but to roll up her sleeves and tackle it head on. I feel lucky that I had her as a partner, and that she was a leader who knew that no one person can fix everything by themselves, And instinctually, she pulled people in, formed coalitions, and welcomed divergent views. She knew that when a challenge we face affects everyone, the only lasting solution was to include everyone. I feel lucky that in the last few years I got to work with Crystal on a whole bunch of things that matter to this region. And she was tireless in that work. Mayor Martin mentioned the jetty. I don't want to say that the Army Corps was tempted to put a restraining order out against Crystal Dingler, but I mean, we got close, I think, at times. But it was personal to her to make sure that she was protecting her community and its inhabitants and the homes of the people who lived here. It was personal to her to address the health of our coastal economy and the challenges of the shoulder season. It was personal to her to protect our forest land and our watersheds so that they could be used for generations to come. I will tell you, over the years, she never hesitated to pick up the phone and call or text just to make sure we were making progress on the issues that she cared about. And look, we would be here all day if I tried to list all the ways in which Crystal worked to make this community stronger. But on top of all that, and probably most important of all, I just want to say I'm grateful because Crystal was a really great friend. I'll always remember the kindness and thoughtfulness and generosity whenever I think of her. And appreciate that not only would she occasionally reach out and check in on me, but she would check in on my family and on the members of my team because she knew that none of us do this work on our own. There's an ancient saying that says, when a soul dies, the wind blows. The greater the soul, the greater the winds. And seeing each of you here and hearing stories of Crystal over the days since she passed, it is no wonder why there have been such strong winds here in Ocean Shores over these last few months, because she is a very strong soul. And I'm so very happy and honored that I had her as part of my life and honored to be here to celebrate her life. As I close this, let me say this. At special times, I have the opportunity and the honor to ask that a flag be flown over the U.S. Capitol to honor those who have made a real difference in our community. And this flag was flown in honor of Mayor Crystal Dingler and her lifetime of dedicated service to Ocean Shores. And Dean, it's my honor to present this to you and to your family.
My name is Elizabeth, and I am the daughter of Crystal Dingler. I'm honored to take a moment to tell you about the life of my incredible mother. I'm here today with my father, Dean, my brothers Kurt and Kenny's wife, Kathy. We are all very glad that you came here to celebrate Crystal, and we are grateful to the people who put the time and work into arranging and organizing today's celebration. Thank you. My mother was a woman who had many passions. Among the greatest were her husband, her children, reading, education, travel, genealogy, and civic duty. I'd like to tell you a little about her life. Crystal was born January 29th, 1945 in Linwood, Washington. She and her parents, brother and sister, lived on a 5-acre family farm on land that is now crossed by Interstate 5. One of her chores was gathering eggs, and her hands were often pecked, so she harbored a quiet dislike of chickens for the rest of her life. After graduating high school, she was working as a switchboard operator when her neighbor Marge set her up on a blind date with a young Navy man named Dean, who was originally from Idaho. She said she knew right away that he was the one. They were married on November 2nd, 1963. Within 4 years, they had 3 children, the last 2 of which were born in Japan, where they were stationed. From Japan, they were transferred to Corpus Christi, Texas, then Virginia Beach, Virginia, and finally to Seattle, where they lived near the Sandpoint Naval Station, now known as Magnuson Park. As a Navy wife, my mom was always busy. While my dad was at work or on deployment, she took care of the house, 3 children, anywhere between 1 and 3 dogs, and her mother, who stayed with us every weekend. She helped with our various activities: Cub Scouts, Campfire Girls, ballet, band, swimming lessons, bowling league. She also had hobbies like pickling and canning, among other things. I remember her sending us kids out with empty containers and told us not to come back until they were full of blackberries. We complained about the labor and the scratches, but we were always first in line for the jam. In the late 1970s, Dean received the news that his next Navy transfer was going to take the family to Washington, D.C. After some consideration, Mom and Dad made the decision for him to retire instead, after 20 years in the service. They wanted to stay in the Northwest, where they're both from, and Dad started his second 20-year career, with Safeco Insurance. It seemed like my mom was always taking classes, but when we were old enough, she started attending the University of Washington, where she really discovered her great love of higher education. She got a bachelor's degree and then a master's degree in English and writing from the UW, where she spent time with other creative people and was a published poet herself. Some of her poems are on a table over there. I have many memories of me and my brothers going with her to poetry readings in the evenings and weekends, where she would read her own work and support her fellow students. It was also during this time that she taught night school English at North Seattle Community College. I recall her preparing lessons and grading papers in between her own studying and homework. She also worked at the administrative office of the University of Washington's Atmospheric Sciences Department. She got me my first job downstairs at geophysics in the office. This was just after Mount St. Helens had erupted, so it was a very exciting time to be there. Eventually, as empty nesters, Mom and Dad was still working at Safeco. Mom was now working at the Patents and Contracts Department of Sunstrand / Allied Signal, which is a defense contractor that made things like helicopter guidance systems and ground proximity warning systems. Her employer had a full tuition benefit for its employees to become educated in fields related to their jobs. So she decided to go to law school. She attended the University of Puget Sound in Tacoma, making the drive every evening from her job in Redmond all the way to Tacoma to attend classes. Her car had almost 300,000 miles on it by the time she was done. At the age of 50, she passed the bar exam and became an attorney. She joined a law firm in Edmonds, and practiced family law for about a year, but found that it really wasn't her calling. I once asked her to donate an item of legal services to a charity fundraiser I was doing for an animal rescue place. And she generously offered for silent auction 2 simple wills or 1 will with trust. And I think it sold for about $275, which is pretty good. It turned out that the guy who bought it had a very complicated set of circumstances, which took a lot of her time. And then afterwards, he called her about it multiple times a day for weeks. I felt bad. Another passion of hers was travel. During the 1990s, when she and Dad were both working and the kids were out of the house, they would take me and my brothers on twice-yearly vacations. In the spring, we would go to Hawaii or Mexico, and in the fall, we would go to Europe. Over the decades, we visited at least 10 countries. And then in 2000, Mom and Dad officially retired. By then, Crystal was getting very interested in genealogy, and a couple of years later, they bought an RV, which they affectionately named the, screw this word up, Indefatigable, after the ship of Horatio Hornblower. They sold their house, put everything in storage, and traveled in the Indy for 2.5 years. They went from the desert Southwest all the way to the East Coast and all points in between, periodically stopping to research family history at courthouses, churches, and cemeteries, as well as just exploring the country. She traced her American heritage through the Revolutionary War, where one of her ancestors crossed the Delaware with George Washington, and all the way back to the 1600s. When Crystal and Dean were ready to settle back into a permanent place, they considered Kentucky, not sure why, where many of her ancestors were from, but eventually they decided to come back to the Pacific Northwest, where they both grew up. Which brings me to her final passion, the town of Ocean Shores. Dean and Crystal selected Ocean Shores as their retirement spot for the same reason many do. The beautiful beaches, the small town charm, relatively affordable real estate. They chose a little house on Octopus Avenue and moved in 2005. That's what Dad said. While my dad took well to retirement and pursued his various hobbies, my mom became restless. It wasn't long before she was involved in various organizations around town, starting with the Friends of the Library, which led to her being on the library board, and later organizing the yearly nonprofit conference, among other things. We've heard a lot about all the things that she was involved in. Eventually, she was appointed to the city council to fill the new mayor's empty seat, and in the next election cycle, mayor herself and won, and was subsequently elected to that office another 2 times. Although it was often challenging and sometimes frustrating, she truly enjoyed her time as mayor and served her community with everything she had. Thank you again for being here today to honor Crystal. She loved Ocean Shores, and her memory will live on in her family, friends, and all of you. I'd like to introduce Sara Logan, the city clerk.
Good afternoon. Today we celebrate the beautiful and impactful life of Crystal Dingler. As you have heard from those that came prior to me to speak, she lived an incredible life. But what could I possibly say in front of all of you about the impact Crystal had in my life in such a short time? Most individuals in this room knew Crystal as a public and political figure. When I started my journey, that is all I knew of her. She was the mayor, she was the boss, and she captivated every room she walked in. With that being said, and without sounding like a cliche, I would like to read the following quote to give you some perspective. Leadership is about making others better as a result of your presence and making sure that the impact lasts in your absence. Crystal Dingler, if I'm being honest, terrified me when I began working directly with her daily. Terrified me in the sense that this is one powerful woman. Powerfully intellectual, powerful charisma, and her ability to push you farther than you thought you could go was intense. In November of 2019, the mayor rolled the dice on me being city clerk. To her, I was probably a little weird because of my obsession of local government in my free time, no less. And by March, our country was hit with a pandemic, which changed the entire way we did things. Crystal and I worked together endlessly, every day, sometimes weekends included, and what I would think Dean would agree, very odd hours. Sorry. But what I quickly noticed is her intellect had no bounds. I was in constant awe of what she knew about very literally everything. The more I got to know her, the sooner I realized that I would never, ever let this person down. I would literally move mountains to work with her in any capacity for the greater good of all of Grace Harbor. This was a strong woman I wanted to become. That beautiful, intellectual woman soon became my friend, very much by accident. But in the 2 short years we went through what felt like hell and back, Crystal would always give me a new perspective, professionally and personally. When I married my wife, she was one of the first people I told, and she was elated and wanted every detail. When I watched my grandmother take her last breath in our family home, she is who I called, and her response was, "Tell me everything about her." Every doctor's appointment, award, triumph for one of my children, she wanted to know everything. Every life event, every phone call, work-related or not, was special. 2 weeks before the mayor passed, I was on the phone with her talking 100 miles a minute, and she interrupted me and began to express how valuable I was to her. And at that moment, I thought, I did it. I earned her trust. I proved myself. Looking back now on all of these I statements, I didn't do anything. Crystal was the leader and the friend that rolled the dice on, again, a weird girl that was overly obsessed with local government and made her into a woman, someone that she could trust and that would never stop until she broke every glass ceiling out and would never stop trying to succeed at life every day. Crystal was a force to be reckoned with, and no one ever stopped her. No one stopped her from education. No one stopped her from research. No one stopped her from putting family, friends, or a community first. So, Mayor, just like the quote, your impacts are still and always will be relevant in your absence. I cannot express to you how grateful I am to have shared a piece of life with Crystal Dingler. Thank you. And next would be Diane Solem.
So I have a dear friend, Anna, who years ago turned me onto a site called Notes from the Universe. And each day, I get a wonderfully uplifting email sitting in my inbox when I wake up. Just generally great messages that we all know, but just need to be reminded of. Messages about patience, or looking for the beauty in people, or looking for the beauty in ourselves. When I went to bed Saturday night, November 6th, the world seemed pretty normal. Crystal had been so upbeat on Tuesday, and her spirits were high. But late Saturday evening, I got the call from Dean that we had lost her. I slept fitfully the rest of the night. When I woke, I was so aware of how our world can change in an instant. I was certainly in need of my uplifting email. And when I went to check my inbox for my Notes from the Universe message, this was the email for that morning in its entirety. When someone special chooses between two great and wondrous paths, like studying the arts versus science, living in Florida or California, or dating Sky instead of Skylar, is there a sudden devastation, heartbreak, and tears for the road not taken? Or is there celebration, jubilation, and excitement for the infinite possibilities that lie ahead? Yeah, and so it should be when someone special chooses to pass beyond the veils of time and space, as all must one day choose to do. I couldn't help but find that so significant in its timing. It helps me celebrate Crystal wherever she may be today, for the joy, caring, friendship, and mentoring she brought to me while sharing this planet for a while. It touches my heart that the speakers before me wanted to share sides of Crystal that embodied her as a friend, which I was honored to call her. We developed a respect for each other long before I worked for the city. My friend Mary suggested I stop by City Hall to get to know more about Ocean Shores, and Crystal gave me a tour, and she was so gracious. One of my favorite times with her is when she and I had to go to Canada for a week for business, and on that long drive we talked about our childhoods and young adulthoods. She had a pretty normal childhood. She spent time on a farm, as Elizabeth said. She did tell me that when she met Dean, she just knew he was the one. Dean tells me he's not sure if it was his music or his blue T3 sports car, but either way, he felt lucky to have her. She drank the most god-awful wine ever. It was made from pine resin. Seriously, you could not drink this stuff. And once at my house, we were making individual pizzas out on the grill, and hers burned so black you couldn't see any part of the crust. And rather than making a new one, she sat there and ate that darn thing, drinking that god-awful wine. That memory will always make me laugh. She truly believed in service. In 2019, the city was putting on a summer youth camp for the kids, both as an opportunity to continue their learning through the summer, but also to make sure that they got a good meal each day. And at the very last minute, there wasn't anyone to handle the meals. I was retired, so I volunteered. Councilmember Peterson announced this at the city council meeting, and the next morning, Crystal called me and said, "What can I do to help?" I told her I needed as many volunteers as I could get to help prepare the lunches, and that most of this work could be done before work started in the day. And sure enough, before work each day, Crystal was right there, working the morning shift, making sandwiches, counting out chips and water, making sure these kids were taken care of. And on the last day, when the afternoon crew was there for the cleanup, there was a knock on the back door. I opened it to find Crystal there. "I'm here to help clean up," she said. She swept. She was on her hands and knees cleaning out the ovens. She just wanted to serve. And in her desire to serve Ocean Shores, I watched her face immense adversity. It was not an easy path she chose. I learned so much from the way she went forward with quiet, steady grace. She was incredibly thoughtful on a personal level. One Easter, she had asked what I was doing, and I said not much really, that I had just seen my cousin, so I was just going to relax. And on Easter Sunday morning, she dropped off a basket with my favorite drinkable bottle of wine, candies, and chocolates. This wasn't the last basket that she brought me. And even when she was ill during our very last storm, she made sure she offered that if we lost power, I could head to her house to keep warm. This was just who Crystal was. She was as down to earth as any friend could ask for. I admired her greatly, and I will miss her greatly. I'm a better person for having known her. And when I think of her, how I will remember her mostly is that she was the calm that I so often sought in the midst of the storm. On behalf of her family, I want to thank you so much for coming. Please take a moment, if you haven't done so, to sign the guest book. Take the opportunity to stop by the table over there where her poetry that is published is on display, and help yourself some cookies and coffee. Thank you.